Hello! I'm Elaine, and I'm a tour guide in the French Quarter. I do ghost tours. And I am not going to tell you the stories that I tell on my tour, because you gotta pay for those. But if you want to hear some interesting things that have happened to me while I'm leading random drunk people around the French Quarter, I got you.
Sometimes I think that maybe I've been doing this job a little bit too long because I've sort of stopped realizing things are a big deal. So tonight, at a very calm, quiet group, everyone was very polite. It was two bachelorette parties and a birthday party, but everyone was sober. They were very nice, very collected. They, followed the rules. I did have to occasionally ask them to, step out of the way of other people just because we were a very big group. And especially when it's hot outside, big groups tend to just sort of expand. And even if they start in a nice, tight clump with plenty of room to go around them, by the end of the story, they're often spread out and you have to keep being like, okay, guys, but really, you still need to leave room for other people. But yeah, so nice group. And it was a quiet night in the streets. I don't think anything even worth mentioning happened until the very last stop. And the last stop is a location that is sort of notorious for cars acting stupid. And part of the problem is that one is literally half a block away from North Rampart, which is a major road in New Orleans and is also the entrance to the quarter. And we're on a one-way street coming into the quarter. So a lot of cars are just turning into the quarter. And I don't know why, but in that particular spot, a lot of cars like to go way too fast. And also, because there's almost always a line of tour guides there, a lot of cars seem to think it's really funny to swerve towards us. And what they're doing is it's a really bad, stupid practical joke where they like to just see us jump up on the sidewalk. It is not very funny. It is not cute, but I know what they're doing. So it's pretty easy to just be like, okay, a car is coming, get as close to my guests as possible. And tonight, sure enough, a car comes around the corner and they're revving their engine. I'm like, yeah, they're going to swerve towards me. So I step right up against my guests so that not a single bit of me is in the road. And that means I'm also millimeters from a guest's face. And because of that, I stopped telling the story because it's really awkward to be shouting a story literally in someone's face, partially just because people spit when they're talking and I'm not going to spit in a guest's face. So I'm just sort of watching this car drive by. And sure enough, they swerve towards me and then they stop right behind us. And I'm like, he's about to shout something rude. And he does shout, but what he shouted was, "Welcome to New Orleans," which may be the most polite thing anyone's ever shouted at me from a car. And so I turn to make a comment about that to the nearest guest, and her response is, "Yeah, but he does have a gun." And I look back and I see that as he's driving away, he is waving something. I'm like, oh, okay. Uh, and as I'm pausing, another guest comments, and he just ran a stop sign. And I look up, and sure enough, he ran a stop sign, almost hit a car. Stuff happens. But at that point, he's gone. So I just look back at my guest and go, okay, where was I in the story? And I just continue telling the story. I finish it. No big deal. Whatevs. And after the tour was over, one of my other guests was coming up and being like, "Oh my God, were you okay? Oh my God, are you okay?" And I'm like, "What?" It was fine. It's then they were like, "The gun." And I'm like, "Yeah, he drove off." And I chatted with a few other guests, and one group was the last group that were still there. They were just chatting with me. And a lot of times the last group that is standing around, there's a bit of an awkward moment of sometimes they just want to stand and chat, and that's fine, and I'm going to stand and chat with them as long as they want. But sometimes you can tell that they want to head out, but they feel like it would be rude to just leave you there. So when I get those vibes from people, I'll be like, "And I'm walking this way." Are you walking this way? We can walk together. And this time I planned on turning off at the very first corner because I needed to file my reports and I wanted to call a friend on the way to a party. I had stuff to do. And I'm walking with the guests and they're like, "Yeah, are you sure you don't want us to walk you back to your car? Are you sure?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'm fine. He's gone." And they're like, "Who?" And I'm like, "Oh, the guy in the car." And they're like, "What? What?" And I'm like, "Well, oh," it occurred to me that they were on the wrong side of the group. They were on the side that hadn't seen the gun. And I was like, "Oh, yeah, no, I assumed y'all were stressed because he had a gun." And they were like, "Wait, what?" And they had that look on their face of "Are you kidding me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he had a gun, but it's okay. He drove away. He's not here anymore." And I just still was like, yeah, it's not a big deal, guys. It's just a gun. And it wasn't until I got home and was counting my tips and saw that I made 3 times the amount of tips that I've made all summer and realized those had to have been pity tips that it really clicked. Like, yeah, most people do consider having a gun waved at you while you're doing your job a big dramatic moment. But I've been telling stories on the side of the road in the French Quarter for 8 years. Like, I have seen some shit. And I mean that literally sometimes. So I'm just sort of like, yeah, unless he's pointing it at me. And, like, if he leaves, it's not a big deal.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, and feel free to share your own experiences in the comments below.